Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. Learn from their experiences and navigate the highs and lows of the investing world. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited. We have a different kind of guest today from what we typically do. And in today's episode of this podcast is going to be with Paul Do Campo, who happens to be an expert in marketing for the real estate investing world. And so, Paul, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. You're actually from Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Coeur d'Alene, all the English speakers. Yeah, Coeur d'Alene, all the English speakers, and I'm originally from Southern California, and so we moved out here just last year to Coeur d'Alene, I can't speak French, so I don't even know how you did it perfectly, I guess, I suppose, but yeah, I appreciate being on here, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. Why did you move to Idaho?
We wanted more seasonal life. Actually, I know people are like, I love the summers and the heat. I think it's crazy, but we actually enjoy the winters out there. The fall out here, we like the fall. We had amazing fall. We had an amazing summer just passed, and so we actually enjoy that. And we want a little smaller town. Southern California, I mean, I think it's no comparison as far as traffic and people go. So
I completely understand. I lived in Southern California for 4 years.
Okay.
And I'm from Colorado. And so it wasn't like 6 months after I moved there that I was already missing home because of the seasons, because of the weather, and because of, just to get out of the city. Like, I was near Hollywood, and you can only imagine the kinds of people you run into who are hanging in and around Hollywood. So I was ready to get out of there like 6 months after I showed up. So I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, I was born and raised there, so I mean, I'll be there for Christmas because I have family still there. But yeah, I don't really miss it. Granted, when it's March and it's still 30 degrees, and you're like, man, I'm getting a little, let's get a little more warmth in here. That's probably the only thing that I guess I'd miss. But other than that, glad to be here.
So you've had quite the journey. Like, you physically moved to a completely different state, but your career has changed over the years. Like, you started off in the real estate investing world doing mobile home flipping and land flipping, and through that whole process of learning lead generation, you become a very specialized expert in marketing. So how did that journey go for you?
So I'll try to condense the story because there's a lot of, everyone's path is a little different. Usually it's not a straight line, right? I don't know who said it. I think it was Earl Nightingale. Everything's your journey's a zigzag, more like it. And so, back in 2015, I started wholesaling single family out in Southern California, and I came from blue collar life. I was probably, I want to say I was 29. 28, I don't know, my math is terrible, somewhere around that age, 28, 29, 30. And so that was my first entrepreneur path to start. I had no experience in sales or marketing. All I knew was I was a pipeline welder for at that time, total of 10 years, but at that time, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years. And so I was running a crew, running a natural gas utility crew out there welding, out there digging holes, operating a backhoe, operating a dump truck. That was my life there. So I didn't know anything else. And so I kind of fell into the whole rabbit hole of wholesaling, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, biggerpockets.com, all that. Whole reasons why, financial, wanting more, all the reasons above that people get into real estate. And so, but I pivoted. I was struggling because I didn't know a thing. I didn't know how to close deals. I didn't know how to negotiate. Barely knew how to market. Just besides from everybody says just send direct mail. So you pick a print house and you send tons of direct mail, and then you have a lead. And you're like, well, what the hell do I do with this now? And
right.
I remember sitting in my car in front of Starbucks to make dial my follow up, and that's what I do. That's what I'm going to tie into. I help investors with their follow up. And so I was sitting in the car and going through my list of all these leads and follow up with, and I see Jane here. And okay, Jane, I spoke with her 3 weeks ago. She said she's not too sure. I'm going to go ahead and pass her for next week. It's probably too soon. And I kept doing this. I kept letting my feelings get in the way of following up. Instead of creating like a process and a system for follow-up, which is what I help investors do with our company OmniDrip. And we just had no process. Everything was feeling based. And then, I remember one time finding out a seller already sold a house because I was just lagging with following up with sellers. And so anyway, struggling at that point to carry on with my story, I pivoted into flipping mobile homes into notes and also land into notes, which was that pivot was just a night and day as far as success goes, because finding the mobile homes, the motivated sellers of mobile homes was as easy as walking through a mobile home park. And I was doing lawn deals. I don't know if anyone's from, I mean, people are familiar with Lonnie deals. I don't know how familiar people are with these, but Lonnie Scruggs is the author, and he has a book name called Deals on Wheels that you can pick up on Amazon. He kind of coined this term and coined this strategy, although I mean it existed before him. But basically, you're buying trailers, mobile homes in a park already, and you're selling them. You're financing to another buyer, another owner occupant buyer, and you're creating a note out of that. Usually these notes last for 10 years, maybe more. If it's a smaller trailer, it's going to be a smaller note, but the ROI of those is incredible. The cash you put into it and the cash you receive, that ROI is incredible year after year. So it was night and day as far as success goes for that. Land was even more of a night and day success, where the leads there are almost dying, I guess, to give up their lot for 25 cents on a dollar, whatever price I quoted them. And the flip side to land, though, it's harder to sell, right? It takes a little longer. All the efforts in wholesaling of acquisitions, that effort is now in actually selling that empty lot. When I say empty lot, I'm not talking about infill lots. I'm talking about raw vacant land up in the mountains or up in the desert. And that's what I did for a couple of years. So, but then, why did I get into copywriting? Well, it was mainly a decision of I had too many pumpkin vines. I got that from Trevor Mock years ago. Too many pumpkin vines growing, and I had one goal in mind. I was to quit my W-2, and that was the fastest route. I could literally do it in one day to the next. So I can get some freelance clients to pay my my monthly bill, my monthly nut, and go from there. And that's what I did back more than a couple years ago. So
you've been doing this for a few years now, and it's interesting because it sounds like you started that right when COVID was really ramping up, right?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that you mentioned that phase, like I felt like it was like, I mean, for some people it's probably longer because of being tied up, but I was still working my W-2 at the beginning of it, and I was still working, and so it wasn't. I never felt the impact of it financially. Never felt the impact with work. Just hearing it from the news, and
right.
And yeah, had no trouble transitioning either from W-2 to being a full-time copywriter. So today, as far as investing goes, I learned, and I think everybody has to go through this, learn what I like, what I don't like, what I'm good at, and all that. One thing I don't like is chasing sellers anymore. I also don't like managing rehabs. Of course, there's ways around all that. Everyone can build. Everyone has the ability in real estate to build their business the way they prefer, the way they enjoy it. And so I became more of a passive investor, just lending money. So and I enjoy that while I stick with copywriting and building and this company OmniDrip, building out follow-up systems for people.
So you went into, because there's an interesting thing about marketing, but specifically copywriting, right? So when people hear marketing, they hear, they think about, okay, like landing pages, email marketing, click, CPA, clicking stuff and getting ads. but you went right into the copywriting. Was that just because you realized you were good at it? Like, yeah, I've
Yeah.
got a knack for this sort of thing.
Yeah, I kind of did. Like because of my struggles with, I dove more into marketing, learning from Carrot, incidentally, like all the stuff they put out, I was just diving into there. They had one, and I would say that this is probably what started it. They had one guy, Trevor had one guy Trevor's really good friends with him. His name is Ben Settle. And Ben Settle's in the copywriting world, he's a very famous email copywriter. And so I dove into another rabbit hole, going from rabbit hole of bigger pockets to then now copywriting, and then applying it to land flipping as well. Because I started what I was learning in email copywriting, I was applying it in my land flipping email platforms. So selling land to my buyers, I was applying it to that. Learning about how to write landing pages, I was applying it to the landing pages for selling these lots. So I was directly applying it to my business. And I learned a lot from there. I saw some really good results, some interesting things with it. And then, yeah, I realized that I was good at it. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I mean, I can't say I was good at it off the bat. Like I wasn't, nobody's good at something right off the bat, I suppose, but I did have a knack of learning it quickly. So.
Yeah, I think that's where it comes from. A lot of people, it's like an athlete, right? Like an athlete can have some, like, they can stumble in and win a game of whatever, right? Because they just have those capabilities. But then to really perfect that skill set and take it to where they can play in high school and college and maybe even professional, like then they have to refine those skills. Like you had a knack for it, you had the ability to do it, but what turned you into a good copywriter?
What turned into it? Well, other than, then studying it and practicing it and writing a lot. I was writing a lot. Daily email certainly helps with that. And I would say what I had a knack for is just the ability to talk, to write like I talk, especially when it comes to like an email. I think, and that's something I apply to OmniDrip as well. And any client that I'm working with emails is the whole, people try too hard to sound like what's professional too much. I mean, there's a time for it and a place for that, but most of the time there's not. And most of the time you want to write like you talk, especially in a marketing email. So, yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. Your question is, how did I develop it? I think it was just through time. I wrote a daily email. I had a podcast. I had an info publishing business, and I was writing a daily email. And I still write. I mean, to this date, I calculated out. I've got about, I think I want to say 2,000 plus email blasts. That is, if you calculate out, that's a daily email for 5 years or something like that.
Right.
So I've blasted off a lot of email, marketing email. So just from that practice, I'd say.
So you got good at copywriting, but how do you measure if you're good or not in copywriting? Is it by conversions?
Yeah. I mean, that is the ultimate goal, is conversions. I remember when I was doing it for land, we were writing, typically for land, you've got your buyers list, and then you blast off a weekly email, just featured deal of the week. That is your typical marketing system for selling land. I did something different because I was learning this whole personality-driven infotainment type of email style. And I would write 3 to 4 emails per week. I would take something of, if I had a piece of land in the mountains, if I had that ready to go to sell, I would round up some things that help persuade people to live in the mountains. So for example, I remember finding, this is a real example, I remember finding something in the news about some scientific study that where people who live in the city are more prone to get heart disease because pollutants in the heart. Like they found pollutants in the heart or something like that. Okay. I took that and I made it really not tabloid-like. I'm still writing on my personality. But I took it as a very entertaining type of email and pivoted pivot into the land we have out in the mountains. And that's because that's typically my buyer. Your buyer for land is, and that's important to know who you're important to know why the person you're writing to is even interested in what you have to sell. I was writing to people who have this dream of living either rurally, getting away from the city, having a place they can pass down to their kids, living out in the mountains for the fresh air, building out a cabin, having a piece of land in the desert to shoot guns with, or something to prep for. So those are all those reasons above the reasons why people are even buying land. So I'm writing directly to that. And so when I started doing that, what I started realizing is buyers that I've never communicated with over phone, over email, who just happen to be on my buyers list, would hit me out of the blue and say, I've been on your email list for 3 months now, and I'm ready to buy. And those buyers were like the easiest buyers that I've come across to. There's no chasing. There's no me constantly texting them, putting them on a drip or task list to chase them. It was the easiest sales I can make on that. So yeah, to answer your question, conversion revenue is the ultimate measurement of email marketing. This is probably getting beyond what investors are interested in, but interested to know in, but I'm open rates. I don't use open rates as a measure of success. I use it as a measure for something else. Click-through rates can be a measurement, but I don't use it that often. But conversion and revenue is what I use. Right.
Well, it's really a funnel anyway, right? Because you got open rate, and then you got click-through rate, which is a fewer people, and then you got, even fewer people.
Well,
it converts, right? So it's like there's top of the funnel down almost, to where people's, just slightly interested to more interested to, I want this.
The reason why I don't use open rates too often is because people, theoretically, it's common sense to look at it and say, okay, the more opens I can get, the more clicks I can get, and the more conversion I can get. I haven't seen that to be true. I've sent emails that are even like inversely correlated, where the one that's winning actually had less opens. Because you can, my style of email has always been personality driven, infotaining based. And I hope this might be getting too far away from what investors are interested in. And we could talk about all that, but if you're writing to a business opportunity type of niche or email list, people who are looking to buy a new offer, they're always shifting into something new. Those lists, the biggest selling point is not so much the copy, it's the new offer that you have in place for them. Other than that, if you're selling the same thing over and over again, I'm going to shift to a personality-driven, infotaining style email. And with those, I've seen, I split tested so many things, and when you do that type of style, what I've realized is what the biggest driver of the open rate is not the actual subject line, it's the sender's name. After so long, after somebody being on your email list for so long, they open it because of the person's name, not because of, and I determined this to open through split tests. So Anyway, that goes far. I know your audience is investors, but
I know, but they're all marketing for leads, right? So everybody is looking for leads. And that's why I said it was a little bit different, is we're not talking about real estate investing. We're talking about marketing,
right?
In the real estate investing world. So this is relevant.
Right.
So you mentioned about the actual subject line and how that wasn't one of the main reasons why people open. So you did some split testing. You figured out by testing different copies against each other, some of them worked better than others, and then you would likely refine those messages and use them more often.
You can. But here's a caveat to that. Yeah, you can definitely do that, and you should do that. You should be split testing, learning, and things like that. There's a caveat to that. If you're sending long enough to a list, and what I've noticed is I can recycle that same email another time, and the metrics are completely different. Maybe it's the worst email that you send. So what I'm getting at is there's other variables to making that work. That's why, I've recycled emails that really, and I'm going to tie this into follow up and ghosted leads. Okay. I've taken emails that had the best revenue, like that's the number one metric. Okay. Best revenue that's attributed to this one email. I recycle it back and it's zero revenue. And so what that tells me is, well, there's multiple variables for one. So timing is one variable I can't really measure or fix. But second, it's not so much it's not so much the copy that does it. A lot of times, it's more of the branding and the timing in place of constantly showing up. So here's a real example for investors and how they can use it for their follow-up. So I have some case studies. When people opt into my email list, I have case studies where I dive into somebody's CRM and we take a look at deals closed, deals from drip sequences closed. And we'll see, like, this is a common question asked by people on podcast shows, by investors. Okay, what do you see working the best? What type of messaging? It's all over the place. I don't see like one specific, like, oh, this right here is killing it and crushing it. Because human psychology doesn't work that way. It doesn't really work like there's one magic word that somehow lures people into becoming a motivated seller. It doesn't work that way at all. What I've noticed, here's a few things I have noticed for a fact. The CRMs I've dove into, a handful of clients allowed me to like really dive into and pick apart their CRM. I find a common number of touches, and that common number is about 70. I see 70 touches before they actually close on a lead that's on the fence. I'm not talking about hot leads. I'm not talking about leads that needed to sell yesterday and you can close them in 2 weeks. I'm talking about the leads that it's just a longer time frame for them to close.
But those are most of them, right?
That the ones I'm looking at, yes, I'm looking at the ones I'm looking at. So that could be different for everybody's market and everybody's world and what they do. But I'm seeing that 70 number, that's, I'm taking average. I'm, plus or minus 10, right? So, and when I say touch, I mean, a call attempt, a voicemail attempt, an email sent, an SMS sent, direct mail sent. Those are all touches. And there's other touches that are not even that aren't even measured in there. And that's them clicking through a link and going to your website. That's a touch. I classify those as touches. See, when I'm marketing, I want touches, and especially in a business to consumer type world, like motivated sellers trying to buy a house. You want multiple angles. So when I mean multiple mediums. So I'm trying to create this whole universe of touches for sellers, where it's not just the text messages. They see the email, they read the email, even if they don't respond to the email, it's okay. That's a big mistake I see investors do, is like, well, I don't get responses from email, so I won't even include email into my drip. I think that's a big mistake, because just because they don't respond doesn't mean that they don't read and see your brand.
Yeah.
So I include when you call, don't just do ringless voicemail. That is such a lazy job, in my opinion, of running a follow-up system, because you are now limiting yourself to a tiny narrow segment of the population that actually opens up their voicemail and listens to their voicemail, right? If anybody's like me, it takes me months to actually listen to my voicemail. And
I have stuff that's still in there. I'm like, oh, I'll listen to that one day. This gets lower and lower on the list.
Right. So, so if I send out a task for follow-up that, to call a lead, I want them to call, and then there's instructions in there for what the call script should sound like, or there's a framework for it. Then leave a voicemail if there's no answer. So there's instructions in a framework for that. And then you can have a text in there. You can copy, if you have it all in the task and your CRM functions this way and it's easy, then you can copy and paste a text to send right afterwards that lets them know, hey, I just left a voicemail. There's 3 touches right there. So there's 3 actions, but there's 3 touches for the seller. There's a missed call notification, there's a voicemail notification, and then there's that text. So it's just wrapping the seller into this, like, that's why I call it OmniDrip. It's just kind of omnipresent type of situation.
Oh, yeah.
So
have you ever tested voice texts before in your sequences?
So is a voice to text, or I'm not too sure.
No, like a voice text. So like I can be texting somebody and I just record it, send it, and they just click it and it's the audio on their end instead of the actual SMS.
Yeah. So I don't set that up inside people's CRM just because people's CRM might not have that capability. But what I do have tasks to send out a personal Loom video or whatever capability they have. I do this in my own business. Like, so when a buyer comes in, I immediately have notification automation that goes out to me. It doesn't stop bugging me until I send out a personal Loom video. It's really easy to do. I mean, it's you know, people say, oh, that's not scalable. Well, if you put it in a process, everything has to be in a process. And if you put it in your process in place for your AM or your acquisition manager, your lead manager to do this, it's there. It's part of your process and the way you do things. And I send a personal thank you Loom video. And I have that as well for investors where it makes sense for certain sequences to send out a personal Loom video.
I think that's one of the biggest drawbacks or things that cause investors to fail is that they rush to scale too quickly. So instead of going deeper on their leads, they're going wider, right? So now they're like, oh, well, you know, I got a drip for these people, but I'm only going to touch them, you know, once a month. All right. And then they're going out and they're getting a whole new batch of leads and they're going down the rabbit hole with those instead of just going deeper with the ones they already have.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I hear this question quite a bit from investors, clients that they like, hey, I have a list of dead leads, or they might call it dead. They may just call it leads I haven't spoken to in a long time. And well, how long has it been? You know, it's like anywhere from 1 to 2 years, I haven't spoke to them. And it's like, can I use your system? Can you use your messages? And I tell them the truth. I don't think there's any hope for that list. I'm not saying that you shouldn't try, but I definitely wouldn't use my system. Instead, what I would do instead is, for one, don't let that list get any bigger. Meaning, you know, the reason why you have that list is because you let things slip and keep slipping and keep slipping because you don't have a process of follow-up. And then it's just like, it's task management, really. So now you go in your email inbox and now you have 500 emails you haven't touched. Well, you got it to that point because you weren't managing it effectively every week. And so don't let the leads get to that point, first and foremost. Second of all, the only thing you can really do is first, I would say, so you don't destroy your domain reputation and now your phone number reputation, because that's a thing now. Like your phone number is going to have a trust factor to it. And if you get caught spamming a lot of people or getting the spam button pressed, you're going to have deliverability issues later. With the whole new, with the whole new SMS rules and laws that have come about. And so what I would say is, first, scrape through there. And if you have somebody to do it, great, but get there and find out people who aren't going to be a lead anymore, meaning they've just sold their property, right? And clean those out. Then send them a very simple text, a very simple email, and maybe even direct mail piece again. Basically with a direct question. Dean Jackson, he's a famous marketer, calls it the 9-word email. It's just a simple, direct question. You know, are you still looking to sell, or some form of it? That is the only thing I recommend to do with those type of dead leads, is to see if you can get a response. You know, direct mail piece. I'm a big fan of following up with direct mail too. So it's not just an SMS strip. That's really minimizing it. Like, with all the tools we have in place, you might as well just use them. You know, you can set up one-off mailers that get sent out. And I'm not talking about mailers that say, hey, we're gonna, we're local house buyers, we'd like to give you a cash offer. I'm talking about mailers that you've already spoken to them. They already know who you are. You've already spoken to them. Maybe you give an offer already, depending on your sequence, but it gets sent out and maybe they ghosted you. Well, it's a mailer that the copy fits the event. It fits the situation. We might say something like, hey, we haven't heard from you in 2 months. We gave you an offer. What's going on here? Something to that effect. Right. So I have a whole series of mailers that we add on to the system as well.
So you mentioned this a couple times, and I'd never heard it before, but I have an idea of what it might be. But you called it personality-driven infotainment. What the heck is that?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that's more for not so much for investors, unless, like I said, I was using it for land, but I don't really write that for OmniDrip for investors, like for their motivated sellers. I don't really do that. But what the heck is that? Is so you have your typical marketing emails that everyone is pretty much aware of, where it's maybe very infographic filled, banner, had lots of colors, and it's coming from, corporate office. It sounds like, okay, you have that style, and then maybe it's just selling, it has a new update, has something new about the product, the feature, maybe a new sale going on. Okay. Then you have your other style, and you see this more in the coaching world. You see this more even in services. I do it, but it's where it's more, you're merging information and entertainment together. So it's talking about the guru's life, and the same thing that you see in social media and influencers doing with Instagram posts, doing stuff that's entertaining. You're doing the same thing with email, but in email format. So that's what I mean. It's personality driven. You're selling you over just the features and the benefits, or over just the company. It doesn't fit everybody, of course. Doesn't make sense won't make sense for Privy, right? So it won't. And so, only when there's a personality behind the company. When I was selling land, I made myself the personality behind it. Right. So yeah, it was a fit.
Gotcha. So the personality driven is about the person behind the brand, not who you're selling to. You're not trying to figure out what their personality is and matching the content to them and what you think their needs are.
Well, you still know your audience. You still know what triggers them. You still know, like, if I, in land flipping, a lot of these buyers are they have dreams. They all have dreams. They have dreams of getting out of their W-2. They have dreams to having something worthy for their kids to pass on. If I relate to them a story of similar results of my own personal life, that's something that they can relate to, right? So you're still touching into what they're interested in. Of course, if you're not going to write anything that they're interested in, it's not going to hit them well.
Right.
It's still you, but it's at the same time still about them as well.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And, I was on a call earlier for one of the influencers who helps us with Privy, and one of his star students was on, and we talked about the importance of the follow-up, and how 90% of all conversions are going to happen in the follow-up, and it's going to be a rarity when you're going to be able to sell somebody on the first phone call or the first email. They're going to kind of click through and buy whatever you're selling. So do you know what the numbers look like around a follow-up, as far as how many people will convert, and how many, you said 70 touches, but I've heard as low as 12 touches, 15 touches.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as percentage goes, yeah, I've heard 60% at the lowest, and I've heard all the way up to 90%. Regardless of, regardless of what it is, because it's everybody's different. Every market's different. The fact is, spending some time in your business and working out a process and a system of how you're going to follow up is that those numbers tell you the majority are going to sell later with you. Right. This is true for for across the board in any industry. I know a friend that he's a copywriting guru. He's a coach, and he sells courses and all that. And in the copywriting world, selling to people who are interested in copywriting. And he has a number nailed down, and that's when he sends a daily email, and he's the same personality driven info time. It's daily email is a big thing in the copywriting world, internet marketing world. Is everybody's talking about daily email. Everybody's talking about personality driven infotainment type emails. So that's a big thing today. And so he does it, and he's tracked it down to where it takes him on average 150 emails to actually convert somebody to buy his most inexpensive course, which could be like $200. And so 150 emails. So that's a daily email. That's 150 days for him. And so, yeah. So the point is, it takes a long time to convert somebody because there's a trust factor. There's a trust factor in real estate. You've got the trust factor. That's one, but you've got the situations that you can't control. Like, so, where the magic happens for drip sequences, for automation, is in these ghosted leads. And I have case studies that show this, where these leads just went MIA. They seemed interested. They might have filled out a form. They might have filled out a form. When those type of leads are known to be good quality leads. They fill out a form. They're ready to sell, but they go MIA. So for one thing, don't react emotionally. People don't all of a sudden think it's a dead lead. But two, what I see after you plug them into a drip sequence, one that gives value, one that doesn't say, are you still interested in selling over and over and over again? But one that actually gives value, has multiple angles of attack, I guess you can say, quote, attack, multiple mediums. What I see is weeks, maybe even months, they finally respond back out of the blue and say, usually they're very apologetic. And usually it's in the form of something got in the way, because you have to imagine, like, we're not the center of their universe. We do this all the time in our personal life, where we have an inquiry to make, or we ask the contractor, hey, can you work on this? The next day, another fire gets started over here in the corner. You have a pot boiling over, and then that thing that you just inquired about, or that thing that you delegated out, you forgot about it. You don't care anymore about it until everything else is suited away. So that happens every day to sellers. So it's important, more important for you to have a dialed in follow-up system. One, again, like I have to emphasize this, one that doesn't say, are you still interested in selling over and over? That is the number one problem I see with people, or investors, is trying to figure out what to say besides, are you still interested in selling? And there's a whole list of things you can do, because we offer benefits to the sellers. There's little things that we do that we can mention throughout the marketing message, things we can do to bring them back to our website, things to do that remind them of what we actually do, rather than, hey, this is just a cash offer, that's. So I hope I answered your question. I think it was,
you did.
What do we see in follow-up? And that's what I see is these ghosted leads and how we respond to that.
So we're coming right down to like the end of the year. Like, this is the holidays, right? And everyone's thinking about Christmas and family and holidays, seasons. And is there anything this time of year that you do differently? Do you talk about the holidays? Do you send them gifts, right? Maybe you got somebody who's getting ready to close. Are you sending them a fruit basket? Are you having emails that have Santa Claus on them? Like, what can people do this time of year?
Yeah. So we don't set anything up in their automation and their CRM to do anything like that. Because what I do is it's a one-time thing. Like, so there's not an ongoing subscription with me. People just buy it one time, and we fix it into their CRM for them. But yeah, I have seen, like, I work with a print shop, and they do. We'll put together holiday stuff where they can send it off to sellers. And I personally don't. I mean, I probably should do it more often. Is send out. There's only a few individuals, like in my Rolodex. Not a few. I'd say it's less than a handful of individuals that actually do this, but they send actual Christmas cards, Christmas gifts to the Rolodex of people. At least what I've received. And so I think it's really good. I think direct mail has such an impact over a digital message. And I can attest to my own lifestyle business, to being a professional copywriter. I only got to that point because of direct mail. And what I mean by that is if I was done with a podcast, an interview, and I really want to connect to the person, I would send them something in the mail. If I just got done with somebody who's a potential client, got done talking with them, and maybe I haven't heard from them for a while, I'll reconnect and send them something in the mail, maybe a book of mine. So because of that, it's been able to build up my network to where it's more impactful for me and for them. They remember me. Because digital messages get lost, and I don't know. I always have. Whenever I receive something in the mail, there's a lot more of a impact than anything. That's the only word I can think of is impact. There's a attorney that I've dealt with in the past. He's done some work for me. Every single month, I know that there's a little card coming, a little like a greeting card style, that has a little note on it, not handwritten. It's he's scaling it, so he's not handwriting to his hundreds of people, but it's some kind of note, some kind of, I don't know, attorney idea, or not idea, but a tip, I should say, tip to business. And if I need, I know that he's there. I know that he still exists. I know that I can give him a call or send an email for any questions, because he consistently sends me something in the mail. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. I haven't tested it, but I know from my own lifestyle that direct mail has put me in my place right now where I'm at. And I don't think there's nothing wrong. There's sending something in the mail to people that you really want to have impact with.
So we're coming up toward the end of the hour here. What are like the top 1 or 2 things that anybody who's doing marketing can do to really elevate the quality of their follow-up or the quality of their messaging so that they get better conversions?
So yeah, number one is I would stop using a generic type of drip sequence for your no contacts. So this is what or ghosted leads. And what I mean by that is what I see often is people have just one drip sequence that they just throw everybody in that they've had no contact with, or they've ghosted them. I think that's a really bad idea. And the reason why is because in that drip sequence, you've got leads that haven't gotten an offer, that have gotten an offer, haven't been on appointment, said no to your offer, etc. You have all these. Now they all have different requirements for call to action. And so what I mean by that is build your follow-up system so that it follows a pipeline. What I mean by that is if the person hasn't booked an appointment, well, that's the obvious first sale you have to make, is you got to get them into an appointment. So my sequence, I'm going to have a no appointment, no offer type of sequence, that where the call to action is, hey, give at least try your offer. Reply back if you want to book an appointment to see your offer, or book a call on our Calendly so we can talk about the details of your house, so we can give you a cash offer, right? So now we have a directed, a very specific call to action on their current event. So if they have gotten an offer and they said no to it because it's too low, you have a place for them. Now I can leverage that whole objection and what's going on right now, which is probably they're shopping around for another offer, right? So that's number one, is have more sequences that fit your pipeline as a seller's moving through it. 2, I would also I would say, I've already mentioned it. I was going to say use direct mail, use calls, I've already mentioned that task, but I'm going to mention it again. Do use an all-inclusive type. Use your website. Most of my clients have website and they have testimonials. I think social proof is really undertapped for investors. Like they don't understand, they don't understand the significance it has. If you send a direct mail piece and there's no brand name, there's no URL. And if there is a URL, they go and Google your name and they find nothing. And they find nothing, it's a really bad sign. This wasn't true maybe 10 years ago when everybody was sending, the yellow letter, like your Joe Schmo from down the street that's looking to buy your property. I get that angle. I get that strategy. You just want to be Joe Schmo. You don't want to be this big buyer. But there's still, like today, there's a lot more skepticism. We know this. It's like a marketing factoid, I guess. Skepticism has risen over the years, and having social proof embedded in your whole marketing system. And I mean, from beginning to end, when they Google your name, what do they see? Can you send them reviews in your follow-up? I'm a big believer in that. So if we find reviews, like this is what we do when we have a client, we go into your system, or we go into your assets, your Facebook, your social media, Google, are there any reviews? We grab the best ones and we put them into email, because we need social proof in there. It's just like you need social proof over there to help merge over that trust factor, that trust. If you look at trust, you put it on a gauge, you have this gauge where they have absolutely no trust in you. They're not going to call you. They're not going to call you back. And then you have finally all the way to the green where they're more trusted. And finally, when they're over the fence, ready to sell, you're at least the number one choice. So, yeah, that's my tips for follow-up, is having an all type of inclusive system where you use all angles, uses all tools in your tool belt, in your toolbox, uses your social media, uses your reviews. If you don't have social media, don't use it. That looks bad if you have no activity in social media and you plug in a Facebook URL. Don't use that. But either case, you use all your tools: email, SMS, everything. I've touched base into that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's, I think that's, there's a lot more, but I could talk for another half hour about what we can do, but,
I'm sure. This is one of those things you can get into some rabbit holes with all the details and all the different things that you can do. And, that's what's fun. And that's probably too, like, where, if people do want to learn more about, your strategies, where can they go and find you?
Yeah, so they can actually download some samples from me. If they go to REIOmniDrip.com, which I don't know if they can see it on here, but maybe not. REIOmniDrip.com, they can actually download some samples. I have some samples of, like, I think it's my signed with someone else sequence. So that's an objection type of sequence where, the name says it all. If they sign with somebody else, you plug them in there. Because I have something I can work with something, right? Like I meant, going back to what I said, if you don't know where they're at, you just throw them into a bucket of, like, hey, never talk to these leads. You can't leverage anything. You can't leverage the event. You can't leverage any call to action, nothing. So anyway, they can download a couple sequences there. They can see me talk about more of this. They can look at other samples I've got, and if they want to go further into it, they can email me at paul@reiomnidrip.com.
Awesome. Well, Paul, I really appreciate you taking time to be here with us today and sharing your background and, your journey along the way from an investor to a professional marketer and copywriter. And I encourage people to go check out Paul's stuff and never stop researching the marketing. Marketing changes all the time. So what worked 6 months ago doesn't work anymore. So it's one of those things that once you dig deep and you become a marketer, you're going to have to always be at the front end of it. You have to be on the cutting edge of it so you can stay ahead of the competition. So, Paul, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Benson, for having me on. Appreciate it, man.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much. And everybody have a great day, and like and follow this page if you already haven't, and get on our mailing list so we can send you updates on new exciting content, tips and tricks for real estate investing that we're sending out regularly. So thanks again.
That's a wrap on today's Real Estate Revelations. Thank you for tuning into the REI Hacker Podcast. Remember, every property has a story, and every deal is a lesson. Until next time, keep hacking the real estate world.